executive orders based around DEI.
Biden's DEI initiatives.
We all knew it was bad.
I'll be reaffirming the federal government's commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion.
But we didn't know the terrifying steps our government was willing to take to make their DEI dreams your reality.
The FAA decided that the hiring pool of potential air traffic controllers was too white.
We didn't know until now. Tonight, in a GlennTV exclusive, I'll give you the never-before-seen inside look at just how far the far left was planning to take DEI. Here's a hint.
We choose to go to the moon.
They wanted to land diversity, equity, and inclusion on the moon. The far left's sinister moves will be revealed yet again. Hello, America. Welcome to the Glenn Beck program. Tonight, you're going to see things that have not been seen by the public before. They're all part of this confidential file that has been leaked to us in this program. It's about the moonshot and Artemis, and it is mind-boggling. I'm going to show it to you tonight. As soon as this broadcast is over, it'll be posted at glennbeck.com. You can see that, along with some of the executive orders that have been passed. What we're talking about tonight, started a long time ago, long before any of us, even me, when I'm at Fox, I read these orders. I didn't know what they meant at the time. I do now. You do now. But we're going to track how this whole DEI thing happened, and then how deep did it go? What were these people willing to do to completely, fundamentally transform America and the world, and to, quite honestly, erase the freedom that we understand? So let's start with the main topic, which is diversity, equity, and inclusion, DEI. And like every other radically dangerous idea before it, it begins as a whisper, something that I even heard in 2008 and didn't know, because I didn't know what I was hearing or listening for. Now, as the Trump administration is beginning to unveil, it has become something so widespread that we still don't know the full extent and damage. Tonight, I will show you how bad it has become. I have a high-ranking general in the studio coming in just a minute. He's in the green room now. He was a mole directly into Biden's DEI program for the military. He's got a few things to say about that. I also have this never-before-seen document leaked exclusively to us that just shows how far they were willing to go. And it is reminiscent. I hate saying this because it's so overused now, but it is Edward Bernays, if you know who he was, or Goebbels. It's that bad and happening in America. And hopefully by tomorrow, this White House and everybody else will know what is going on, and it can be stopped. Because as we know so far, nobody really knows this. Nobody knows it. It'll be up to you to carry it to your friends and to our White House and to our government to make sure it's corrected, because it is disgusting. So how far were these cultural Marxists willing to go to transform our country? Would they spend $100 billion? Would they sacrifice our security? Would they sacrifice even the holiest of holies, their almighty God of science, to see it through? I'll show you tonight. Radically dangerous ideas like this, they have happened throughout history. And the consequences, quite frankly, always turn out deadly in the end. But it's what happens when you pit neighbor versus neighbor, coworker versus coworker, family versus family, family members against other family members. And honestly, when Trump was voted in, we all thought it was bad. And then we started to learn some more. And then we thought it was really bad in 2020. And then we started to see how they were targeting our children. We watched. We thought it was bad. We saw it through our schools, Hollywood, beloved corporations. But even that was nothing as it permeated all aspects of society here on Earth and beyond. So when we speak, and we speak up to the progressive left and we say, hey, wait a minute, they clutch their pearls. Oh, my lands. Why are conservatives so racist? Oh, why don't they like inclusion? Oh, why Nazi, 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 Nazi? It begins with a whisper. Nazism began much the same way. whispers, and then it goes into a small corner of the pub and a few more people whisper it. And before you know, there's somebody giving speeches standing on top of the bar or at the table. Speeches become ads in newspapers. Media then is harnessed, and it permeates the darkest corners of society. It goes everywhere. Monsters like Joseph Goebbels reinvented propaganda. No, actually, I can't say that. He just used the American propaganda that was taught here. It was called public relations and propaganda. And we gave it to them. They learned from us and Woodrow Wilson. And they took it to a whole new level. And now we're doing the same thing here. And it was started by an American who was a family member of Sigmund Freud named Edward Bernays. He's a fascinating man. You should read his original books. They're terrifying. But in 1965, there was an autobiography, and in it, Bernays recounted, they were using my books as the basis for a destructive campaign against the Jews of Germany. This shocked me, but I knew any human activity can be used for social purposes or misused for antisocial ones. Do not misread this. This guy was a very bad guy. I mean, he may not have wanted to kill all the Jews or whatever, but he was a very bad guy. And this is how the Nazis packaged and sold fascism to the Germans. Exactly the same way on how diversity, equity, and inclusion is being used today to sell cultural Marxism to Americans. Selling Marxism, that's really what DEI is all about. And it began in the 1930s. Where? Well, Germany, of course, Germany. This ideology is so dangerous and destructive. I want you to familiarize yourself with a few things. First, the term that's going to come up later, you've probably heard it a million times, but BIPOC. It's Black, Indigenous, and People of Color. Now, according to Healthline.com, this term gained traction in the early 2010s, and it was used specifically to say that if you're not white, you're a victim of systemic racism. You're a product of discrimination and prejudice. In fact, the YWCA officially uses BIPOC and says the term emphasizes that systemic racism continues to oppress, invalidate, and deeply affect lives of people that aren't white. Okay, we know this because we've lived it in the last few years, but you've got to be solid on this before I show you the next step. Notice the use of the word oppress. This is the root of the entire purpose of cultural Marxism. By the way, so you know, this all came from Germany, but it came from communists. Remember, the Nazis, the socialists, the fascists, were fighting the communists. Well, when Hitler took over, they're preaching the same thing, except it's not communism, or it's not fascism, it's communism. And that's what they brought over. But it's the same germ, literally, killer germ. And it redesigned society based on this paradigm of oppressed versus oppressor. So you're either a victim or you're a monster. That's it. Those are the two choices. And skin color and sometimes gender decides which one you are. Nothing about your character. The fact that Martin Luther King would be rolling over in his grave at the mere notion of any of this never enters their mind. Probably because the people that brought this into our country never really heard a single speech by MLK. Cultural Marxism was brought to the United States from the Frankfurt School in Germany during World War II. And the idea was, how do we establish Marxism? You know, just without all the bloody stuff. How do we topple America and bring communism here? And the first thing they had to do was they deleted words like proletariat, working class, and bourgeoisie. Okay? They replaced those with culture warfare, like race, gender, sexual orientation. They didn't get this right away. It took them a while. The German academics would later set up shop at, what a surprise, Columbia University in New York City. Western culture was the true enemy that could be exploited. Marxism was just a weed that could be used to slowly choke our country to death. So let me take it there. I want you to imagine a garden, okay? Because that's our country, yours and mine. It was a garden, and we would tend that garden all the time. It had all kinds of plants, traditions, family values, faith, free markets, individual liberty. They were all growing up. Some were stronger than others, and they're rooted deep in the soil of history. But then this vine comes along, cultural Marxism, and it doesn't announce itself with trumpets, because if it did, you would immediately kill that pernicious plant. It's quiet, it's sneaky, and it stays down low. It starts in the shadows, down in the dirt, whispering that everything we've built is rotten, oppressive, unfair. Shh. It says the garden has got to be torn up, replanted from scratch, not to make it better, but to make it more equal, even if that means choking out everything that's already in the garden. But it can't announce it. It has to be quiet for a long time. So the first stop that it goes, where the vine takes root, is into the schools. Frankfurt School, Columbia University, and then all the universities all around, the professors, the intellectuals. They're the gardens that have planted and tended this vine. Back in the 1930s, academics spread out like a virus from Columbia University and started saying society's not broken because of bad laws. It's broken because this culture is broken. Family, religion, hard work, that's a cage. And they taught kids not to fix the system, but instead burn it down. Well, this is about the 1960s. That's why we saw our colleges on fire in the 60s. And it was clearly, they were holding up signs of Chairman Mao. But then it started to spread. They taught things like oppressor versus oppressed. Everything is a power struggle. Truth is subjective. Divide people by race, class, gender. There's nothing about the facts anymore, remember? Facts don't care about your feelings. It was all about feelings and grievances. This is what they started, and then they targeted our children. Today, K through 12 grade schools, they are still today fighting to keep DEI as part of the official curriculum. It must be cut out. It is a vine choking our children to death. Now, those tendrils, they creep even deeper. They go, Hollywood, been there for a long time. Then they go into music and TV, and then the vine just wraps around them, twisting stories into tools. Movies stop celebrating heroes who build. No. Now it's the anti-hero. Now they glorify rebels who tear things down. Songs stop lifting up people and being about love. It's about sex and your big butt, I guess, and what you can put in it. It's all meant to stoke your anger, to dumb you down, and to separate you from everything that we ever held as good and decent and honorable and uplifting. So you begin to find it harder and harder to see the American garden. It's just shadows now of resentment. You watched the Oscars last week? Oh, good for you, because neither did I. No, nobody really did. But the nominee list included movies about sex workers, sexually confused gender-bending priests, and trans cartel bosses. All right. Did anybody see those movies? Unfortunately, some did, but they're mainly these people. Now, the vine is growing thicker and thicker and thicker, and it's fed by every classroom lecture, every protest chant, every viral post. And it's not just an idea anymore. Now it's a mood. It's a religion without a cross. You see where we are in our storyline now? We watched as the infestation moved to the next layer. And that next layer is where we really started to see during the Biden administration, all in businesses. When we started to see every business start to teach this crap, when Coca-Cola was doing it, with Nike, all of this. Well, the recent moves by Donald Trump and his administration have sent these companies into full-on retreat. They're freaking out, but I don't believe any of it is real, quite honestly. I think they're just hiding. Warner Brothers, Goldman Sachs, Paramount, Pepsi, Coke, the list goes on and on of the infestation. It was everywhere. And then you get to BlackRock. Freaking BlackRock, the company that bragged how they would force DEI behavior on all corporate board levels, okay? Now they're turning on DEI. I don't believe it, but that's what they're saying. But the invasive infestation, it's too deep, as I'll show you later in the show. The gardener used to be the one, but he's been choked out long ago, literally and figuratively. It used to be people like you and me, but then it became the state because we started to gather and say, this can't happen. This is top down, bottom up, inside out, okay? The entire country, everybody was watering this vine. That is cultural Marxism. That's the end game. Why? It's easy. It's all about power and control. When the garden is a mess, the people are scared and divided, and they beg for a savior. They beg for somebody, and the state steps in, promising to prune the chaos, but instead it locks the gates. We saw this in the last 4 years. Free thought, gone. Property, shared. Faith, replaced by loyalty to the system. The vine is no longer a weed. It is the only plant left. That's cultural Marxism's dream. A garden where nothing grows except what the state allows to grow. Connect the dots. Follow the growth. The vines flow straight through every aspect of our culture and straight to the government. And it starts with ideas. It starts through stories. It fractures people and ends with control every time. The government is helmed by progressives. They've been waiting to do this for a very long time. And it took 2 giant leaps forward. And let me show you them. You know this. One promised hope and change. The other used the chaos of the pandemic to push it over the finish line. I'm going to pick it up there next. All right, I want to talk to you about emergency preparedness, but not like, oh, we're all gonna die. I want to talk to you about emergency preparedness like you're on vacation, okay? And your kid gets sick and you're someplace, I don't know, Mexico. Well, why would you be in Mexico? Well, you might get an infection from all the bullets that have just riddled your body from the cartels. But let's just say it's, they got an infection of some sort. They got a cold. So having a Jace case is part of that emergency equipment that you should have with you all the time. I can't recommend it highly enough. If you're the type of the person who wants to be prepared when disaster strikes, and when one of your kids is running a fever in the middle of the night, you don't have to go find an open CVS or Walgreens. You just use the Jace case in the morning, call the doctor. You just take it as directed. The Jace case is a personalized emergency kit that contains essential antibiotics and medications that treat the most common deadly bacterial infections. It provides 5 life-saving antibiotics for emergency use. They even have ivermectin as an add-on, if you're a horse. So go to jace.com and enter their giveaway or purchase your own case. Enter the promo code Beck at checkout for a discount on your order. That's promo code Beck at jase.com, jace.com. I did when I was at Fox a whole series, I think, on Edward Bernays, and you need to know him. But we also sometimes should do a series on Ian Fleming, the guy who wrote James Bond, because the guy's a hero, and I don't know if we would have won World War II without him. But the reason why I bring him up is because in every James Bond movie, I don't know if you ever know this, but it looks like the good guy is, James Bond's going to be defeated, right? And the bad guy gloats, He's supremely confident. He's like, and we're gonna torture you now. We're gonna do this really slow and painful death. We could shoot you, but we're not going to. And then the bad guy just starts yapping, okay? And he just starts telling him exactly, now you don't understand, Mr. Bond, this is what we were really going to do. That's a mistake. Just like in James Bond movies, when they were super, super confident, just before the 2008 election of Barack Obama, Michelle Obama must have had James Bond locked someplace because she said this on the campaign trail in May of 2008.
And Barack knows that we are going to have to make sacrifices. We are going to have to change our conversation. We're going to have to change our traditions, our history. We're going to have to move into a different place as a nation to provide the kind of future that we all want desperately for our children. And he is the man to do it.
20 years ago, I heard that. I knew it was wrong, but I was making the wrong argument because I wasn't informed on cultural Marxism. Change our history, change our traditions. Most people blew past this. I talked about it for 2 or 3 years. What is that? But Michelle was pulled from the campaign trail as soon as she said this. They knew she just spilled the beans. They didn't know that America just didn't understand cultural Marxism. But that's the marketing strategy. And yes, Barack Obama was the guy chosen to do it. Now, I want you to remember this idea, marketing strategy for cultural Marxism, because after the next break, I'm going to show you this. This is a leaked government proposal to do just that. It is Goebbels. It is. It's one small step for man, one giant leap for the fundamental Marxist transformation of the globe. The left now, in the last few weeks, has been reeling. Okay, we're 6 weeks into the Trump administration, and they just don't know what to do, okay? Because diversity, equity, and inclusion has been one of the main points of Trump's attack, because if you don't kill this vine, it's going to just continue to choke everything to death. On Trump's first day in office, he immediately signed an executive order called the Ending Radical and Wasteful Government DEI Programs and Preferencing. Now, if people don't pay attention, they're like, that's just because he hates, black people or whatever. That's not what it is. He then rescinded 2 executive orders, one from Biden and the other one from Obama, both aimed directly at DEI. So his moves were just getting started, and we were just starting to really wise up. He placed federal DEI staff, all of it, on leave. He targeted DEI in federal contracting. Then he moved on specific DEI programs in the bureaucracy like the Department of Education and the FAA. It was an onslaught. Oh my gosh, airplanes are going to fall out of the skies, remember? But it didn't have anything to do at all with political maneuvering. Trump knew where to strike. He was attacking the cultural Marxist rot that had been infesting our government for years. And this wasn't just an attack, it was a counterattack. It was a response to Barack Obama's fundamental transformation of America. Can I say, finally? Because Obama knew exactly what he was doing. Even at the time, I'm on Fox doing chalkboards every day. I didn't understand it. I do now. And he moved with lightning speed to introduce cultural Marxism through DEI directly from culture to the halls of government. Now, most of us didn't blink twice, even knew what was really happening when President Obama signed this executive order. This is Executive Order 13583, and it establishes a coordinated government-wide initiative to promote diversity and inclusion in the federal workforce. I remember reading this when it came out. I didn't know what it meant. And I certainly didn't know that was just the beginning of it. We didn't know about Obama's divisive rhetoric. I mean, we did, but most people didn't. But what people really didn't know is he matched that with federal action, like this one. My Brother's Keeper Alliance. Remember, he's like, we're all brothers. We have to keep people. We got to keep our brother and make sure we look. And they tied it to Marxism. Do you remember that? Well, this is this alliance that was signed in an executive order. And this drove DEI action to the federal level and kicks it into high gear, including moves at the Department of Education. Obama wanted to move rapidly, super fast. Power in the executive office is limited. If he just had a national or even a global crisis to take advantage of, that would seal the deal. But they didn't have one. Biden did have that. And look what happened. He took what Obama started, weaponized COVID, and then ran with it. On Biden's first day, here's his executive order, one of his first ones. He doubled down on what his former boss started with Executive Order 13985. This one advances racial equity and support for underserved communities through the federal government. Full state level response is cultural Marxism's end game. And Biden was just getting started. He continued with the next executive order, 14035, diversity, equity, and inclusion in the federal workforce. And it was designed to bring DEI into the entire federal government as a model for how the entire private side of American businesses should operate. Public-private partnerships. I could go on with a list of executive actions signed by this last administration to advance DEI over just the last 4 years, but it literally would take more than the rest of this show. It was that bad. I haven't even mentioned this one. I love this one. This is Order 14091, more DEI. Or the official actions by the bureaucracy like the Office of Personnel and Management, the Office of Management and Budget, the Equal Opportunity Employment Commission, on and on and on. It was everywhere. So, I'll have all of these up, all of these moves up at glennbeck.com as soon as the show is over tonight. But the fundamental transformation of America was not a campaign slogan. It was an operation. We knew it. We just didn't see all of it. This is why the Trump administration was attacked so horribly, and he was throwing bombs out all the time, and things would come down. You're like, wait a minute, but 2020 with COVID, oh my gosh, they had it. That's when we discovered what all of this stuff meant, because it was happening to our kids in school. This administration is taking it on now. The administration concentrated so heavily on DEI in the past 6 weeks. The soul of our country is at stake, and he knows it. Cultural Marxism has spread through every single dirty hall of the federal government. But even though Trump is now addressing it all, the threat isn't over. This threat is so incredibly deep that it could take years to fully weed it out. We're still trying just to get a full grasp on how bad it had become. We didn't know anything 6 weeks ago. We really didn't. We certainly didn't know this. I'm going to show you next what's in this folder. Never before seen before. It's an exclusive to this program sent to us by some whistleblowers. It takes you inside the mind of a federal organization trying to sell cultural Marxism and DEI. I mean Goebbels, Edward Benet's sort of sell. They wanted to spend $100 billion, and DEI was how they were going to package all of it. I have not seen anything like this before. You're going to be the first next. So let me give you a list of names, and you tell me what they all have in common. Andre Botticelli, Steph Curry, Justin Bieber, and Tim Tebow. What do they all have in common? All of their moms were encouraged to end their pregnancies. Now, look at just that roster. Imagine if they didn't live. Now look at 65 million children that were killed. How many genius, how much talent have we killed? When a woman faces an unplanned pregnancy, it usually doesn't go well. She's pressured usually to end her child's life by everybody in the relationship around her. She wants to make the right choice, but society and those around her are telling her that's not really a baby. It's not life. It's going to be too hard. And then she knows that's what I have. I don't have any help. She may be destitute, can't afford. So what does she do? Well, she usually goes into a clinic. And if we can get her into a preborn clinic, preborn and their network of clinics offer compassionate care to moms who need support. Now, to help them choose life, they just start with a free ultrasound, paid for by somebody like you or me. Once mom hears the heartbeat, she's twice as likely to choose life. Now, if you consider yourself pro-life, it's time to join forces with preborn, because they take it a step after. They help mom and the baby for up to 2 years after the birth. This is true compassion, and you're saving two. You're saving mom and the child. Please dial pound 250, say the keyword baby. It's pound 250, keyword baby, or visit preborn.com/Glenn. That's preborn.com/Glenn. What I'm holding in my hands right now is absolutely unbelievable. This is something you were never, ever meant to see. Oh, you were meant to feel it. You were meant to experience the effects. We were meant to be drawn into this grand design, just like any great tool of propaganda. You weren't ever meant to realize what was really going on. It was just supposed to happen, just spontaneously. Okay? Oh, this isn't AstroTurf. This is completely organic. Really? It was supposed to be an unspoken trigger in your brain. And this is how evil our country has become, quite honestly. Do you know that Barack Obama, he made it okay to use propaganda against our own people in our own country, and we've never changed that? We've never repealed that, as far as I know. The powerful tools of propaganda, something that we learned in World War II, very bad. Propaganda, public relations, and advanced storytelling through advertising, they're the methods to see DEI replace science. And none of us would have known what was really happening if it wasn't for this 99-page document. Now, this was leaked exclusively to my team at The Blaze by 2 NASA scientists. It isn't a detailed breakdown on the scientific milestones that need to be met in order to land us back on the moon. That's Artemis. We're going back to the moon. No science in this. It's not even a breakdown of cost, but we'll get into that here in a second. This document, which probably took millions to produce, and some of the best minds in some of our craziest universities, it's right here, and it's called the Playbook for Artemis. Now, remember, it's not produced by the scientists. It was created by public relations gurus, and it is a crazy roller coaster that includes emotional appeal, psychology, and PR to make you feel something. Coincidentally, this is exactly what Joseph Goebbels took from Edward Bernays. I'm just saying. So, Project Artemis. It began after the Trump administration kicked off this presidential memorandum to, quote, lead the return of humans to the moon for long-term exploration and utilization. Okay? Emphasis, I guess, on the word humans, because we can't say land a man on the moon anymore. Okay. It continues and it says, followed by human missions to Mars and other destinations. So when Joe Biden got into office, everything changed. Human changed to what? NASA will land the first human, first person of color, and the first international partner astronaut on the moon. Wait, so we have a Brazilian one-legged lesbian going to that's what we care about? She was going to the moon. What's your real goal here? What's your real goal? Was science now being replaced by cultural Marxism and DEI? Yes. And here are some of the quotes from the NASA scientist whistleblowers that leaked the playbook and who we cannot have on this program because they're still afraid for their jobs. Even though they're now in the private sector, they believe the government's reach is so powerful and so long that they will be snuffed out of that job in the private sector. One of them said this, I was told to be seen and not heard in all meetings related to science. As a scientist, I was pretty shocked at how meticulous they were in controlling the narrative and already pre-identifying protagonist and antagonist. You should see that page. That page is actually in there. It's pie charts, it's graphs, it's everything. The way that they would cherry pick these rags to riches stories of these astronauts, a lot of it was centered around DEI. NASA, in my opinion, has become a glorified DEI program. Think of that. From the premier science organization of the entire world. Remember, Obama changed the NASA to something that could give respect, I guess, back to Arabs or Muslims or God only knows what that was. And then it changed to this. It's kind of concerning to hear, especially given the fact from the science people that it is coming from NASA's own scientists. Now, President Trump ordered the interim head of NASA to immediately halt all of their DEI initiatives, but I'm curious if it's not too late already. Artemis has been hit with delay after delay after delay because progressives can't do anything. It was projected back in 2021 to hit $93 billion. Now that number is supposed to be over $100 billion by next year. For context, the original Apollo program aimed to be the first on the moon ever. We had to invent new technologies, do things that we never attempted before. Nobody had it. They never thought we could go to the moon. Apollo targeted 12 years of exploration and accomplishment with 6 moon landings. Its total cost was $280 billion, and we have nothing to show for it, and we've already blown through $100 billion. Maybe, and I'm just saying here, maybe it's because NASA was too worried about DEI over actual science. Even Michael Bloomberg criticized the wasteful spending on Artemis. He stated, and I quote, "The problems with the start of the mission, which is more political than scientific. If we ever want to explore, we have to have a base on the moon. They have to. There's water there. There's all kinds of stuff that we've never really explored. And this is the base to go to outer planets and possibly someday to other galaxies, other solar systems." Whatever could Bloomberg mean? Politics over science? Doesn't sound very progressive, does it? Well, it is. If you're a cultural Marxist. And they were ready. They were ready to do all of this. But it has to have $1 million or more propaganda playbook. And that's what is going to be available right after the show at glennbeck.com. Right on the second page of this playbook is the true mission, what it actually was. Quote, NASA will land the first woman and first person of color on the moon. Have you watched what was that? There's some, oh shoot, I can't remember the name of it now. For All Mankind, that's what it is. It's this, okay? Now, we're not landing the most qualified, not the best, not the brightest. I don't care who they are. I don't care what they have in their pants. I don't care. You got to get the pioneers who have dedicated their lives to pushing the limits of human endurance. No. NASA is concerned only in checking the diversity boxes. Do you want to be on that missile if that's the kind of people that have designed this whole thing? Because I don't. Now, to sell this to the American public, they have come up with a Marvel-esque storytelling universe here. It's really, it wasn't called the Marvel Cinematic Universe, but it was called the Artemis Universe, okay? They make it very clear who their audience is. They state that their goal is to build mass appeal, especially with underserved and underrepresented groups. In other words, it's not a mission to the moon, it's a marketing campaign for social activism. Do you remember the chalkboard where I told you the intended reasons for using the terms BIPOC, oppressor versus the oppressed? This is what this document is outlining. A prioritized outreach strategy targeting BIPOC youth, ensuring that this program is viewed through the lens of diversity rather than scientific excellence. Wow, that's really good, huh? And NASA isn't trying just to inspire the next generation of astronauts. They're going to sell an ideology. Wait until you see this thing. They're trying to prove how inclusive they are instead of proving how capable they are. NASA knew there would be pushback on this. So in their cinematic universe, it goes on with the skill of a master storyteller. Here's a graphic I want to show you right here. This graphic shows how they would frame everything with made-up plots. Not kidding. No joke. Designed with heroes, bad guys, all of it. The bad guys were pretty specific, by the way. They were skeptics who control budgets. The dastardly people in mustachios take the form of contemporary issues like inequality, poverty, and culture gaps. Nazi, Nazi, Nazi. Except they were the one using the Nazi playbook here. This is one of the most detailed peeks behind DEI propaganda. I've never seen anything like this. I have stuff in our library across the brickyard from Germany that's like this. I've never seen anything like this from America. And it would make Bernays and Goebbels proud because it was designed to spread stimulate widespread behavioral changes among individuals. Now, when did NASA get into that game? I didn't know that. Maybe when they found out how profitable DEI and cultural Marxism would be if you combine the public NASA with the private corporations. You see, all of this has a very lucrative endgame. It included, I'm not kidding, in this document you'll see it, a future Artemis world theme park. They've outlined movies and TV shows with companies that they actually name: Netflix, HBO, and of course, Disney. They also have designed products, moon-made products to be sold through partners like Colgate and Coca-Cola, and a new shoe with clothing lines with Nike and Adidas, H&M. Cultural Marxism, but with a few, coarse capitalist benefits, I guess. How far we have fallen, how dark things would have been had they gotten yet another term. Long, long gone are the days when, half a century ago, somebody could say, we choose to go to the moon in this decade and do all these other things, not because they're easy, but because they're hard. No, now we choose to go to the moon, not because they're hard, but because of equity and stuff. And we could make a boatload of cash off the cool merch. Not kidding. More in a minute. Back in January of this year, the White House declared that we were in a national energy emergency. It was so important that you and your family had to be prepared for whatever emergencies might arise, things like power outages, even EMP attacks on our electrical grid. Well, that's where My Patriot Supply might come in handy for you. Not only do they make amazing emergency food that you can store long-term for when you need it, but they also make a lot of other emergency preparedness equipment. They just released their new Grid Doctor 3300. It's the first solar generator with revolutionary EMP intercept technology. Look, solar flares are going to happen. And when that happens, you need the backup power, or God forbid an EMP. Well, that's going to happen because Donald Trump he's going to start a war with Russia. Wait, I thought you said just last week he was cool with Russia. I don't understand I forgot. You don't have any logic. It has 3,300 watts of power. It can run pretty much whatever you're going to plug into it. It comes with a free 200-watt waterproof solar panel. It's an opportunity to keep your family prepared and safe, so don't wait. Get your Grid Doctor 3300 with EMP intercept technology now at My Patriot Supply. Secure your family's future at mypatriotsupply.com. That's mypatriotsupply.com. Hegseth, our Secretary of Defense, has made eliminating DEI one of the first imperatives that needs to get done. Now, some, like this article in The Intercept, are calling it a dumb distraction. I want to introduce you to my guest tonight. He's coming in just a second. I think he has a different opinion, maybe not. DEI in the U.S. military took a giant step back or step forward under Barack Obama. Have we taken a big enough step back? I want to show you something in this report, From Repression to Inclusion, Diversity Leadership for the 21st Century Military. Being color or gender blind, no longer the policy. In fact, the policy states good diversity management is not about treating everyone the same. What? Okay, so the new military would treat everyone differently, but based on color shade of your skin or your chromosomes. This is ridiculous. This is a fighting machine. Everybody's got to be in the boat together. After the death of George Floyd and then the Summer of Rage, military branches like the Army launched programs like this one, Project Inclusion. DEI is in the very first sentence. Core curriculum like this document for the U.S. Air Force added in sociology like class, race, and ethnicity in society, and gender, sexuality, and society. As of 2024, the military was spending $90 million just on DEI and requesting another $114 million on top of it. What the hell are they doing? Spreading propaganda on our men and women in uniform. Well, my guest knows exactly what's being done, what has been done. He was signed directly into the Biden administration's DEI push into our armed forces. He spent almost 2 years as the senior analyst for the Air Force Office of Diversity and Inclusion at the Pentagon. But his views didn't exactly, they weren't the same. Let's just put it that way. Please welcome retired Air Force Brigadier General Christopher Walker. General, how are you, sir?
Absolutely great.
It is great to meet you.
All my friends call me Mookie. So.
Okay, Mookie. How did you get that job? Why were you?
Ooh, all right. Let's just say that there were remnants of the Trump administration still in authority positions, and when that office was formed, the structure of that office was a 2-star equivalent senior executive service civilian, and the deputy being an 06 colonel. And now that gave certain people an idea, because in certain meetings when the principal couldn't be there, they weren't going to let in a colonel in those meetings. It's going to be generals and SESs only. And so certain folks who were remnants of the Trump administration who knew me when I worked with them before said, let's get you in there so you can be an intermediary and maybe a bulwark for the crazy.
So I've got so many questions for you. I want to know about purple ropes. I want to know.
Oh, Lord.
Office of Force Resilience. What the heck is that? But we have to go to a break, and we're going to, part of some of our network is going to split off. But I want to, if you can answer this quickly, we'll get into it later, a little longer answer. Does the president and the current administration really understand how deep this is, and can it be rooted out?
Oh, they understand how deep it is. As a matter of fact, some of the rooting out that's going on right now, people in the Pentagon are panicking. I have friends who are part of different chat groups, Facebook pages and such, and they send me the screenshots of the people absolutely trying to swim in the tsunami, and they will be drowned.
Oh, I'm glad to hear that. Okay, hang on. The next portion is going over to BlazeTV subscribers. Use promo code Glenn, get a great discount when you subscribe. Also, the General's joining me tomorrow on radio on our podcast. All this information is available everywhere, glennbeck.com.